Here we are. Let's
It's
go.
okay. Okay. Thank you for coming in today to discuss our open ECSC teaching position. This role is pretty crucial to our campus in helping our younger students, in the mainstream classrooms and those that are self-contained as well. So the ideal candidate is someone who has, previous and deep knowledge of early childhood development and special education. So when I saw your resume, I was like, let's pull her in for sure. So some of the key components of this role are delivering instruction based on IEP goals, and then behavior support, so implementing proactive classroom management, and then following behavior plans for any student who may have one. Team leadership, so you'll be supervising and supporting paraprofessionals, probably 3 in your classroom, and then you'll be working with your partner teacher as well. Family collaboration, working closely with families for goal setting, communication, consistency, obviously compliance, such as, meeting timelines, documentation, legal requirements, data, all of the above. And then collaboration, so working with outside therapists, speech therapists, PT, OT, administrators, general education teachers, that type of thing. So first, can you tell me about your experience in special education and how it has prepared you for an ECSE role?
Let's see. I have taught special education for, I taught special education for 8 years in the resource and inclusion setting as well as the self-contained setting. And in the self-contained setting in my district, it was students with multiple different disabilities, and then as well as teaching preschool with both students, both gen ed students and students with disabilities, both diagnosed and undiagnosed.
Right.
So I think the combination of experience of those two will help with the ECSC position and teaching littles with and without disabilities.
Awesome. Okay. So what is your teaching philosophy when it comes to working with early learners who have disabilities?
Obviously,
how do you work with them?
Right. Obviously, early intervention is key. So just starting from the beginning, seeing where they are and what their strengths are, what they need a little extra help with, and just being able to modify from there. Especially at the very beginning, it's good to try to just get in and support them with their areas of most need early on so that later on they'll be stronger there.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. What drives your passion for working in early childhood? Why do you do this?
I like seeing our little friends learning new things and realizing what they can do. And that moment of, oh, that's how I do it, is just, it's fun to see.
Yes, I love it. So seeing their progress. Do you have like any specific stories of the student that you've seen significant progress with?
I do. At the beginning of the year, he was afraid to, not academic, but afraid to go down the slide. Yep. And we worked at it and supported him and whatever he wanted, if he wanted, us to watch or us to help him. And finally, the first time he went down the slide by himself, he started clapping and was pointing it out to everybody. So even non-academic achievements are
yes. Social and anxiety. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Love it.
We'll come back to him in a minute.
Yes. So how, as far as we're moving into instruction and curriculum, how do you design instruction to meet the diverse needs of students in an ECSE classroom?
Well, first off, take whatever material that you have as a whole and determine, what students are really strong in this area, what students need extra help. And the ones that are stronger in that area, you could even possibly give them some independent tasks or see what they can do on their own. The friends that need extra help, first off, determine, what they need help with. And then I always like to try to tailor it to their interests. So for example, I have a friend that is trying to learn to count, row counting, counting items 1 to 5, but he doesn't like to count. So we counted superheroes, or we counted pictures of his classmates, or something that particular child is interested in. That way it's more motivating for them.
Right.
So
awesome.
Both of which are things that we really did count.
Yes. Have you worked with any specific curriculum programs in any district?
Yes.
At such a young age, it might, you might not have it.
Right. Oh gosh, language for learning, I believe, but that was with my elementary school kids.
Okay.
And there's a couple different, like it's language for learning, and then there's some other things that go along with it. I don't remember right off the bat, but
Okay.
that was more with my older kids too. So.
Right. Okay, cool. So how do you use data like progress monitoring and assessments to inform your instruction and IEP development?
So obviously data gathering is kind of the the crucial part of what we're doing, and it decides like, hey, we're making progress, let's keep doing what we're doing, or no, we're not making progress this way, we need to go back, regroup, and either change strategies or change how we're presenting it, even sometimes just changing the setting in which we're presenting it.
Right.
Maybe we're presenting it in a small group setting, but that child really needs one-on-one. But all of that data really helps decide. And then if you need to even overhaul, go back to ARD and make big changes.
Yes. Okay. How do you incorporate play-based learning into academic and functional goals? You kind of touched on that earlier, but
yeah, just trying to make it fun where we can. Lots of
Yes.
movements, especially with littles, because sitting still, what is it, like 3 minutes for every year of life or less? So getting up and moving, even if it's, for example, we were finding letters. So it was run across the room and find the letter A, run across the room and find letter B. Just getting movement involved or getting around, or even, making things a game, but just basic skills.
Awesome. I love that.
We may have worn dinosaur hats while doing it too, so just
I
throw
love
that.
Especially the littles. I'm sure they were roaring all over. Okay, so for behavior and management, describe your approach to managing challenging behaviors in specifically like a self-contained setting.
So in self-contained, it's really important since you have a smaller group to try to figure out what's setting off the behavior and seeing if you can change it. For example, one of my friends, it was every morning when she went to a different room that said certain things in that room would start behavior for her. So finding an alternative that wasn't as triggering for her. And then as well as sometimes it's important for you and others just to not ignore, but just like realize what behaviors need to be focused on and what behaviors you can just let go and the students will learn to.
Right. Yes.
Word verbiage there is not good, but you know what I mean.
No, I mean, ignoring.
Ignoring.
I use that a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. You have to be really good at knowing like when to intervene and when to not. Makes sense. So share an example of a time.
So same friend that I was talking about earlier, the other room would be triggering for her, but we created a sheet that had, her feelings and emotions. That way she couldn't say, I'm getting mad, but she was able to point to it and be like, I'm getting mad, I need a break. And once she started to be successful with pointing, we kind of elevated it, but that helped her, since she couldn't find the words, it helped her to advocate for herself really, and also to prevent big behaviors from happening, to kind of cut it off earlier on. But just giving her the tools to find the feelings, the words that she couldn't come up with verbally.
Right. Okay. Do you have like a classroom, layout of communication type, a communication type system for students who are nonverbal?
Yes, and I will say that the school I was previously at, our speech pathologist did a really good job of providing not only the student with the items, but we actually, our speech fast got a grant, and we had communication boards on our playgrounds.
Ooh,
So we could really share it with not just, gen ed teachers, but the gen ed students, and to show them what it looks like and how to use it, so they could even use it with their lesser verbal friends on the playground. They could even go up and point, and it really helped for collaboration there.
Yes, and inclusivity. I love that.
It was really cool.
I love that. How do you balance proactive strategies with reactive supports?
I think it's more, reactive is definitely but proactive is more important. You prevent a lot of bigger behaviors or bigger things, but then obviously, like, things are going to happen, changes. Maybe, the fire alarm went off, stuff that's out of our
Right.
control. So it's important to have plans in place for when that does happen. How are we going to react, and try to make it uniform across
Right.
everybody that's working with that student or that group of students. That way, you're all kind of presenting the same thing.
Right.
So-
Right. Is that something that your parents have kind of previously been able to follow along with, or already had knowledge of, or have you ever had to train on kind of the positive?
Yeah, a little bit of both, especially with some of the students and their specific behavior needs.
Right.
Especially like if they have a behavior plan in their IEP,
Mm-hmm.
being like, okay, this is, if this happens, this is how we're going to respond specifically.
Right.
For this child.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so as far as stepping right into paraprofessional supervision, how do you train and manage your paras in your classroom? What methods do you use?
Well, it's always, I feel important to kind of have a family meeting and just see what they expect from me, what I expect from them. If there's ever any problems, that way they're more comfortable coming to you as a peer, but also going through, the needs of each student and discussing who's going to do what, how we're going to divide the tasks that we need to do, and, what happens if something changes or goes wrong, who's going to handle it. Just kind of laying down expectations at the beginning really helps. And then that way, if later on there's a change or a problem, your parents don't feel afraid to come to you and say, like, hey, what do I do here? Or what can I do? Can you help me?
So. Right. Okay.
And I think too, with that, it's important that as our IEPs change throughout the year, that to make sure that, I as a teacher am in the IEP meeting, my para is not. So make sure that the para is updated with what changes as well.
Right.
So they're not accidentally doing something differently that we are not doing.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of, teachers kind of forget that and just assume that their parents
knows what they know.
What's happening next. Yeah, that's a really good point. So how do you ensure that paras are effectively supporting students and not just like helping or doing it for them?
If possible, it's always nice to observe the para working with the student, especially if you're in the same room. You can kind of listen and hear and give constructive feedback or things like that. But yeah, what's the quote? When you do it for me, it just shows you do it better than me. So always just reminding them, let them try and do as much as they can and step back before really helping.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
You ran out of lead.
I did. Okay, so kind of along with that, have you ever had to, kind of go back and reteach a para over and over again, or had to come to a point where it's like, okay, this isn't working out, and needed to take it a step further?
Me personally, no, but I do know my co-teacher had, and just observing, they were, they had a meeting, things weren't working. They invited in, outside, I think it was the assistant principal, just to kind of help with what was going on. And then also something that was helpful was just making visual reminders of like, hey, don't forget to do this, this, and this, or here are the steps. And then that way, it wasn't just pointing out one person. It was like, okay, all of us can use this. All of us can see, like, when you're working with a student, this is what we need to be doing.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was, told teachers, you give students visual schedules.
Visuals help everyone.
Yes, exactly. It's definitely
Absolutely.
beneficial. Even, for me, I'll make myself a checklist, and that's so much more beneficial. Awesome. Okay. So what is your communication routine with paras for daily success? How do you?
I always check in definitely at the end of the day. Just say, hey, how was it? What happened? Anything you need to tell me? Anything that you need me to know? Check in during the day as well, but definitely at the end of the day. And just make sure everything is going okay, especially because a lot of my paras do inclusion with my self-contained students, so they're out of the room and I don't necessarily know what happens, so that way I just am filled in. They also, in my district, our paras do take some mild notes of what happened during inclusion, so I can look over those as well and just see what they did or what subject was talked about, that kind of thing.
Have you ever had paras take data for goals?
Yes.
So we encourage that. So don't feel like there's a wrong answer.
More so if it's either like inclusion for some of my friends that do have either social goals or things like that, definitely they'll take that. And then in the classroom, if like I'm working one or one on a small group and they're working and they have the time to take specific, then yes.
Right. Okay.
And I, for that too, always just make sure that you model what is the like what is right, what is wrong, just so they know they're not just guessing at,
right.
Oh, did this kid get this right? Or is that what they should be doing?
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we're going to discuss family engagement. How do you build relationships with your families, especially those who you might feel overwhelmed by the special education process in general?
Just try to be open if they have any questions or any concerns, and always make sure to send home or communicate the positives, because with SPED, they're going to get a lot of middle to negatives, and it's good to show that, like, hey, there's a lot of positives too. And make sure that, anytime there's anything their child is getting some kind of award or any kind of recognition, to make sure they know about it and that they're there.
Right. Okay, awesome.
I say my old school is really good about, like, especially, okay, music is having a program. Well, we want him to come, so we're going to invite the parents. So yeah, things like that. Making sure they're
and making sure that, the school includes them as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. On campus. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's comforting for the parents too, just to see, like, oh, my kid can stand up there with
with everybody else and be just fine.
Yeah, exactly. And might even be better behaved than some of the our general education students.
Very true.
So how do you communicate student progress, especially when there's a child who's not meeting their IEP goals?
So we do send home the quarterly, or excuse me, ours are 9 weeks, but the paper progress updates. But I do always let the parents know, like, if they have any questions about it, they can contact me. Or if, like I said, if you notice there's not progress being made, to contact the parents and just say, like, hey, we are monitoring this. If it keeps on, we'll make some changes. Or, we think it's this and that we're going to change these things in the room. Are you okay with that? Just making sure the parents are in the loop on all the steps of that process.
Yeah, I know that can play into, like, ESY as well. So, eventually when you get to the art and you're talking about ESY and you're recommending it, they're not,
surprised by because they've heard that earlier on.
Right. So for IEPs and compliance, walk me through how you write and prepare for an IEP meeting.
So I know a bunch of different campuses do it different ways, but important to get feedback from, if there are gen ed teachers that they see. A lot of my students, especially self-contained, the gen ed teachers typically are just going to be art, music, PE, but it's good for them to tell me maybe how they're interacting with their peers or socially are doing. And then, take the data that I have and any test data that I have, as well as we do scatter plots, all their scatter plots, and update. We also use, for our younger friends, it'll come to me. We'll come back to it. But we use a testing system, and especially for the younger friends, just to see how they've progressed on that, because it can kind of guide what the next step is in writing goals. So, like, they've been able to do this, what logically is the next building block. So using that to help determine next steps. And then also parents during the IEP meeting can have input, but I do like to ask them before as well, because sometimes they have something specific that maybe they think is necessary and we can work it in, or we can't. For example, once one of our parents was like, I really want them to learn to tie their shoes. And I was like, okay, that's something, that we can, like, they were a third grader. I think that's good. So we worked it in. And so just seeing what they want and things like that. And then for scheduling, seeing if what they were doing works. If they're good with the inclusion and things that they're doing, keep on. If we think that they can have some support pulled back and be successful, try that. things like that. And then always just to be open to making changes in the meeting because inevitably it will happen.
Yes,
A lot.
especially when you get that many adults in the same room.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll ask you the next two about IEP and compliance.
Ables. Sorry, came back to it. It was Ables. That's the testing we use.
Yes, yes. Have you? So yeah, that was gonna kind of be one of my one-off questions was systems like that, or if you've ever worked with like Polaris or I think the other one is called Goal Writer or something like that. But essentially, like getting some baseline data to help align the PLAFs with the goals. So you've worked with
Ables. Yeah. And I will say the curriculum that we use, the language for learning, language for reading was the other one. They did have as well kind of a baseline assessment at the beginning of each set of the book, so that especially more for a resource or self-contained setting, that would be a good like baseline indicator for those goals. So.
Okay, awesome. So how do you stay organized with your documentation and timelines?
Big calendar, big binder. Yes. I'm very much a paper pencil person. I do, use computer stuff too, but I like to have it in front of me when it's, when the meeting is 2 weeks out, making 1 month out, making sure all of it's marked down, when I need to contact different people, just so I can see it. It's there. Yeah. Yes. And for like scatter plots and things like that, I like to have the binder out to where also the parents can access it if they need to or they want to see how a kid is doing. For self-contained, because the group is smaller, I was able to do drawers. And so each drawer had a child's name, or actually their initials, and it would have their scatter plots as well as items needed for that goal. So, if it was a goal on counting items, I would have the items in there, or if it was whatever. So just, I'm very much, I like my physical things versus online.
I have finally switched over to the digital world, but it took me a long time. It was a big struggle. Okay, awesome. So how do you ensure that student goals are meaningful and measurable?
Making sure that, well, for the measurable part, that there's quantities and there's a timeline, all that. Meaningful, just making sure it's appropriate for them, making sure it's something that they need to learn, that's the right level for them, it's something that's going to benefit them later on in life. So.
I had something to say. I don't know. We'll come back to it. So collaboration and just working with a team. How do you collaborate with different service providers like speech therapists, occupational therapists, that type of thing?
Just making sure we're on the same page as far as goals, but that I'm supporting whatever they're doing, just like they're supporting me. So my friends that have a speech goal, if they're really working, they're really focusing on the S sound. I also, in my room, am focusing on the S sound, or my OT is focusing on going up and down stairs. Well, I, in my day, can take him by way of stairs versus by way of, not. So just supporting whatever they're doing and just making sure that we're kind of on the same page for whatever our student is doing.
Have you ever had like scheduling conflicts where, maybe a therapist will come in and you're in the middle of something? How does that work out? Do you guys, how do you handle that?
I always know that because they're traveling, I try to defer to them first. So making it happen for them, and that I can, I'm with the student 8 hours a day, every day, whereas they're with them once a week. So I try to put them first, that kind of thing. And I can fluctuate and change my stuff out of that. So
awesome.
OT, AT, PT. I'm like trying to think because I've had, kids with the whole
every service.
Service. Yeah. So
there's a lot out there. I'm trying to think of everybody that I've worked with. I mean there's like vision services and deaf and hard of hearing.
Yep, had those too.
It's a lot of schedules to put together into one student's time. Right. So that's what I try to be flexible as a teacher as well. So it's probably the best approach that I have found.
Make it work.
And then I know there was actually also when like speech therapists would come in, we would kind of plan to co-teach so that they could get their time in. But I was still, like working on the content that I wanted to. So that was helpful as well.
I like that.
How do you handle disagreements during ARDS or IEP meetings?
Just make sure that whoever you're disagreeing with, everybody is, presenting all the information. If you need to recess the ARD and come back, like that is an option. I've been in ARDs like that where it wasn't going to come to a decision that day. And it's always important we don't want to push a decision. So like if that needs to happen, like it's going to happen, and we'll come back and everybody can talk, think, relax, come back to it. Yes. So I was in an ARD. It was not an ARD I was running. It was a student that was potentially going to come to my program. But I think it recessed 3 times because mom was like, I don't want this. I don't agree, with whatever the school. And I was just an observer, but we just kept coming back because they're like, okay, let's take a break and we'll come back later and try this again. So what's the best?
Nobody was giving in.
Nobody was giving in. So gotta take a break. Take a break.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I've been in a few of those. What role do you think the ECSC teacher plays in a multidisciplinary team?
I think definitely bringing the SPED component in, just because that's a big part of the I don't know, their role is having SPED students is being able to accommodate and provide those supports. But then just also working with everybody else on the team and making sure that we're all working together to get what's best done for that kiddo.
Yeah, awesome. What is your usual comfort zone subject area?
It's kind of hard. I do love math. I like reading too, but I feel math being more concrete is a little easier to teach, especially to SPED kiddos, just because they're, it's a right or a wrong. There's no gray area. So I do like math, and we can make it fun. I've had friends count with toes. I've had, like I said, friends count superheroes and their classmates. So you can still learn math, but have fun with it. So I like math.
No. And I asked that because when we start doing PLCs, like SPED teachers will often jump into, subject area, subject level. So just figuring out which way you would go. And I feel like more people are more comfortable with reading. So when we hit somebody who's more comfortable with math, I'm a math person myself. So, okay, great. So next we're going to move on to kind of scenarios. A new student with aggressive behaviors just enrolled. The team is really overwhelmed. How would you approach the first few days with that kid?
Starting out, we only have what data has been given to us. So go off of that. If it's his IEP says do this, this, and this, you got to start with that and see what kind of reactions that causes. If something works for him, just because in his old district doing XYZ worked doesn't mean it's going to work here. So just kind of go with what you have, but take lots and lots of data. So that way, if you need to make changes, you have the data to back it up.
Yes, awesome. A para is not following directions or is behaving unprofessionally. How do you handle that?
First off, just talk to the para one-on-one, see if it's something you can help with, or maybe they're not understanding something. If it doesn't get better, though, definitely involve principal, assistant principal, just so not only, it's not just the two of you, but you have some support and somebody a little higher up can give some guidance as well.
Yes.
And also I know sometimes
provide some clarity, sees
it differently. And I know sometimes being in a room with a person all day, it's like they could feel negatively towards you, but if it's coming from a principal, then they're not, with them every day. Just the situation about.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, so a parent is upset about a service that their child is receiving and requests a meeting. How do you prepare for that meeting?
Bring all the data you can about why that child needs that service or the benefit they're doing. If they're growing because of that service, bring all that data, but just everything that you have that shows why we decided that service to begin with. But then just also be open to see why the parent doesn't like it. Maybe it's because they're being pulled out when the service could be provided in the room. If it's something that we can accommodate and make a quick fix, that would be good.
Right.
But just lots of data that show why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, it's hard for parents to see, from the educational standpoint why things might be better or worse. And so yeah, having something concrete for them to see or look at.
This is why
awesome.
they do, they make 100 on this test in here, but they made a 50 on it in this other
Right,
thing or whatever.
exactly.
So, yeah.
Okay, so for campus and just kind of overall leadership, how do you see yourself contributing to campus-wide initiatives or the school culture?
Just whatever, if there is a campus-wide initiative, just make sure that me as a teacher, but also my class is participating, because even, self-contained students are part of the campus. So we want to make sure that we're doing what everybody else is doing. So the example I have of that is my campus was a science fair campus, and every class did a science fair project, and so us included. So I created a science fair project that was at my kids' level, and we made a poster, and they had some help from me, but we participated in the science fair just like everybody else. So that way they feel like they're part of their school, and their peers and other teachers see that we're the same as them.
Yes.
We're all part of it. So
awesome.
It was a really cool science fair project too, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, that sounds fun. What was it?
So we got 3 different brands of popcorn, and we popped 2 or 3 bags of each brand, and we counted the kernels that were left in each bag to see which bag popped the best.
Right.
And so my friends that had counting object skills, we were counting objects, we were sorting. I let the ones who wanted to write or wanted to decorate do the poster. But yeah, so we decided which of 3 popcorn brands popped the best. Yeah. Like I said, it was fun, and we got to eat popcorn.
Yes.
So.
Which I feel like is a part of, daily life. And
yes, and we do snacks every day.
Yes.
So yeah, but we did. So ours was
That's awesome. That sounds so fun. I'm gonna pass that idea on.
It was super fun.
So how do you stay current with the trends in special education?
Just make sure you're listening to what's happening in the world. Whether that be going to trainings or joining groups on social media or in person. I myself am a member of many, many Facebook groups just about special education, just to see, because there are different things happening with adults, with children, with everybody. So just keeping your ears and eyes and mind open.
Yeah. Networking is super important. Okay, so what kind of professional development do you usually seek out?
It's hard because, especially for self-contained resource, sometimes you get lumped in with other groups that is not necessarily beneficial to you.
Right.
So I think it's just important to find, if there's not something beneficial to you, maybe a subject matter that you want more clarification in, or just something that you think would help you be a better teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
Or
Tuka, what do you do?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that's always a tough one.
Yeah.
I feel like, principals never know where to
what
send.
to do with the SPED teachers.
Yes. Yeah, that's hard. So how or who do you why do you feel that you are the right fit for this position?
I feel like, since I have background in both SPED and early childhood, I think it would be beneficial to blend these together.
Yeah.
I do love my little kids, and I love seeing my kids grow, whether that be socially, academically, emotionally. So yes.
Awesome.
Living the best of both worlds.
Yes. Do you have any outside experience working with your atypical student or person that could even help in this kind of setting?
Right. I do volunteer with children with cancer, which some may not have any physical or mental disabilities, but a lot do, whether it's based from their treatment or there's a lot of comorbidities with cancer and different disabilities. So being able to do that and see them in an outside of school setting definitely helps.
Yeah.
Helps both me in school, and school helps me with them. So.
Right.
Both ways.
Yeah, and you can get you see it from the outside perspective, and then from the inside. Cool. Do you have any questions for me or anything else that you'd like to share?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just put that in there.
Yes. I don't know what I was going to ask you earlier that I was like, I need to bring this up, and then I forgot it.
Send me a message. I'll answer.
Yes. Oh, it was for behavior. So when you have a student with an aggressive behavior, have you ever done a restraint or, been trained in restraint? How do you work out, I guess, figuring out when a restraint is required?
Once the student has reached the point that they're going to hurt themselves or others, that's definitely when it's necessary. But before you get to that point, make sure to remove all other people, all other things. Try to get them to the most minimal place you can. I did have a student we were able to build a timeout area for, and it was put in his IEP because of the legal wording of timeout. So size-wise, it was created for him. And just, if we're able to get into that space where there was nothing, we did not need to restrain because he was safe. And so if you have the ability to do that, obviously that's the best choice. But once you realize that that student is going to hurt someone or somebody, that's definitely when to restrain. And also make sure you have called for backup.
Right.
Lots of help, because the more, not too many eyes, but like you want more eyes on that child and you as well, just to make sure everybody is safe and they can help guide you through it. They can say, oh, your arm is slipping, pull it up, or if you need to tag out, that kind of thing.
What are some of the restraint program trainings that you've been through?
CPI.
Has it only been CPI?
Yeah, both districts I've been in use CPI.
Okay.
So I was able to transfer that up to McKinney, actually.
Oh, nice. And then when was your last CPI training?
I believe for me it was 2 years ago, just because I have moved to private school and we don't do the restraint training. So I am technically expired on my CPI. But yeah.
So they're doing a 2-year block now. Yeah. So you would probably just barely be expired still. But if you take it in November of 22, then it won't expire until not the end of that school year, but the end of the next school year. Wow. Yeah. So a lot of our teachers just start doing them over the summer as their exchange time. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
I did get to experience 1 year. I don't know if it was just where it was or the trainer, but 1 year I did get to do it was CPI, but it was designed more for your autistic population. Oh, yeah. So just some of the, they were saying they may not be able to say when you ask, or just kind of giving some modifications to and that was pretty cool. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I think CPI is designated for, or specifically made for elderly or people who are fall risks and stuff like
anybody,
that. And so I was wondering if they offered something that was more geared towards students or the little ones, especially because it's so hard to do a restraint on a 3 or 4 year old.
I've assisted with a restraint, and this was an elementary school child, but they were small enough that we were on our knees restraining them. So, but just because hand wise they were going crazy, but they were small, so we restrained on our knees.
Yes, that's difficult. And then the other question I had was, if you suspect a student might need a different service or program or just updated testing, how do you go about getting that for them?
First off, try to collect all the data you can that would show they need it. And then a lot of the times the parent may be okay if you trial things with them. So maybe call the parent and say, look, I want to try this accommodation with them. If it works, I'll let you know. We'll have an ARB, we'll put it in. If it doesn't work, I'll also let you know we won't put it in. But just, get the data, check with parents, and then trial. If it's something little that you don't, necessarily need approval, just start trying. But if it's something bigger, for example, maybe it's a speaking device or something, to make sure to check with the parents and trial it to get that data so for sure, yes, this is going to help them, or no, this is not going to do anything for them.
Okay. And then, working with outside therapies or whatever to get all that done. Have you ever, I mean, have you done that previously in classrooms? Okay. And then what was like the most, I guess, extreme case of that? Because I know, like, oh, this colored overlay is going to help a kid. We can kind of just roll that out. Has there ever been a time where you had to like take it a step further or really fight for that thing, or justify kind of over the top?
Yes, it was more because I think the parent didn't quite understand.
Okay.
Because the parent was under the assumption that giving them this advice was going to be a weakness, or giving them this was going to like hinder them in some way. So just my speech path really helped in showing research, or just things saying, look, they're not going to regress because we're giving them device. Actually, it's the opposite. They will improve. Data shows that they'll be stronger. So just, I think a lot of it too is just because it's new to the parents, or they just don't know about it. Things like that. But yeah, definitely, a lot of times it is resistance from the parents. So. Or even, sometimes teachers who just don't know. They think it's a crutch when really it's going to help them in the long run.
Right. What kind of following off of that, what do you do for teacher buy-in for things like that? Like, how do you encourage teachers to use the accommodations or the tools necessary for teachers or for students who might be pushing kids?
As much as I can, I try to make sure that it is as easy as possible for the teacher. So if it's something the kid needs, I'm going to provide it. If it's a testing accommodation, I'm going to make sure it's there. That way the teacher's not scrambling because they have, 30 other kids with 30 other accommodations. So if it's something I can make easier on them, I try to. So that way they're not stressed about it. It's one less thing. If they can go, oh, it's there, I can use it, they're more likely to than, oh, I have to go find it, I have to make it, that kind of thing.
Right. Awesome. And then, I mean, other than that, I think that I have gotten a lot of good information. Is there anything else that you need from me or wanted to ask? Or
I think we're good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You'll be hearing from us soon.
So